Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third episode of the First Class Lacrosse podcast. My name is Matt Dunn, and today I will be joined by my co-host, Deemer Class. We are thrilled to be interviewing Maryland men's lacrosse head coach John Tillman. Coach Tills has built the Maryland lacrosse program into a consistent powerhouse since taking the reins in 2011. He has led Maryland to 2 national championship wins, one in 2017, which was the first since 1975, and then one in 2022, where Maryland had an undefeated season. He's also gone to 8 national championship games, 10 Final Fours, 14 NCAA tournament appearances, which is every year he has been coaching at Maryland, and he's coached 88 All-Americans and has 31 NCAA tournament wins. In addition, he's coached countless professionals, Team USA players, and many guys that are currently serving as college coaches in the NCAA. Beyond all these accolades, I've been fortunate enough to play for Coach Tills for 4 years at Maryland, and I know firsthand how he impacts his athletes beyond the field and prepares them for life after lacrosse. A little more background. Coach Tills is from Corning, New York, and a graduate of Cornell in 1991. Had a brief professional playing career for the Baltimore Thunder and Washington Power from 97 to 2000, and he's coached at Ithaca College from 92 to 95, Navy as an assistant from 96 to 2007, Harvard as a head coach from 2008 to 2010, and now he's entering his 15th season as the head coach at the University of Maryland. With all of that being said, Coach Tills, we're honored to have you do the podcast. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Obviously, big fan of what you guys do, so happy to be here.
Yeah, Coach, welcome. It's been really a pleasure getting to know you, through coaching and getting involved in lacrosse, and through your relationship with Matt as well. And we've always been super grateful for your support and excited to learn more about you and your story today. And appreciate you spending the time.
Now, same. Feelings mutual. It's fun watching you as a player, and even back when you were playing for Duke, Matt had nothing but great things to say, and obviously you were a big part of a lot of those really talented and successful Duke teams. So big fan.
So today is Halloween. I remember on Halloween my senior year, we did a costume. We all dressed up. We made a fun thing, and we had a shooting contest where you hung a pumpkin in the goal. Do you know where I'm going with this? We had a shooting contest where you hung a pumpkin in the goal, and it was this fun competition where each team got to do step-down shots at the pumpkin. But slowly, everybody kept missing the pumpkin, and what went from a fun competition turned into a stern talking to from the coaching staff about how we couldn't hit a pumpkin. Are you guys doing any current Halloween festivities today?
I think I'm scarred from that experience. I remember that. I actually think we had a recruit that day, and I think there was someone there, and I'm like kind of talking to them like, you probably feel like you could start right now. So I do remember that we hung it in the goal, like, all right, someone will hit it, and we just kept going and going. It was almost like, Aaron Rodgers waiting to get drafted. It's like, okay, this is going to happen eventually. It just never seemed to happen, or it happened a lot later than we thought. And that was pretty funny. We've done a number of different things. I asked the guys if they wanted to do something this year, and they said they didn't want to. We try to kind of give the guys some say on things we do. We want them to be involved in some of the decision making. So business as usual today, but we are going to do some things for Thanksgiving and for the holidays when we get closer towards exams, things like that. So those seem to be things they were a little bit more interested in. So happy to do that.
And Coach, what do your next couple of weeks look like leading into the holidays? I assume 20 hours is winding down, if not already. And then what do you guys try to do these last couple of weeks?
Yeah, really, do some exit or end of the fall meetings, and just kind of meet with guys and let them know, get some feedback from them and give them some feedback on things that maybe we felt like they did really well and they could build on, and then some areas where maybe they can improve, give them a sense of, where they are right now, which obviously can always change. And I feel like that information is important, right? Players kind of want a sense of, hey, where do you see me? What am I doing well? What can I do better at? And so knock those out, but also get in those 8-hour weeks. So we'll stay with the strength and conditioning, and making sure that we work on some of our footwork and agility stuff, and then keep the sticks in our hands, but definitely change gears. I think that is important to, you're in the 20-hour weeks. It is a long year mentally and physically for the guys. And if you want to throw in emotionally as well. So I think making sure that we're sensitive to that so that we're not, beating the guys down too much in the fall. You want them healthy, you want them mentally fresh, you want them excited. So, staying, aware of where we are there, but also, using this time to get out with the guys and spend some time with them, get them know them better. Work on specific things, maybe individually with guys, but also some macro things, whether it's working on some zone offense that sometimes you don't get to in the scrimmages. Sometimes when you scrimmage, people don't have those in, so you can start working on your zone defense, zone offense. We like to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So that gives the guys 4 days off a week. So to me, there's a distinct difference between where we are right now, what the spring's going to be like. And I think that is helpful for the guys. They have a lot on their plates. We do try to have them live the be the best mentality. So if we are going to ask them, to be the best student they could be, then we got to make sure that we're efficient with their time and respectful of what they need to try to be successful and have good grades, whether they want internships or go to grad school or just have the best grades they can have. So excited about that part. We'll also get on the road. We'll start hitting the recruiting events and doing that on the weekend. And in a way, it's kind of fun because you get to see some of your peers and some of the guys that you've been all focused on your teams, but you see them on the weekend. And it's always nice to catch up with some of those guys and trade some stories and connect.
Yeah, this has always been. I remember, and I was talking to some of the guys, the college guys that I used to coach. This is always one of my personal favorite times of the year where you kind of wrap up fall ball. You have some data on where you're at from the prior year. The coaches give you that data and that feedback and tell you where you're at. And then you have a 2 or 3 month period to really just focus on working with your positional coach, getting in that extra film, getting stronger in the weight room. And it is, to your point, an emotional break from what feels like a lot like, fall ball is serious lacrosse. You guys are probably practicing pretty hard. You're playing Cornell, you're getting ready for the alumni game. This was always a time I look forward to because I do think it's a point where you go from playing and now you can get assessed, you can direct where you want to focus and get better on. And then your next feedback loop is going to be in January, probably, which is preseason prior to the spring.
No doubt about it. And again, I think the guys being able to catch their breath, we scrimmaged Cornell on Saturday and they had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off. And Wednesday we didn't practice, but we got together. So again, for them, this week has been a lot lighter. And I think for them, I think most of them have appreciated that, enjoyed it. Some guys were a little nicked up, so gave them a little bit more rest. So to me, it's just kind of the way the year goes, and organically, it is kind of a nice change I think for all of us. And it just frees things up a little bit. You got a lot on your plate that you're trying to focus on. So even for the guys to catch their breath a little bit, I think it is helpful for sure.
We're going to dive into some more of the details around, your guys, how you develop players and all that in a little bit. But we wanted to kick it off here. So we have a coaching community, coaches around the country that join. They get access to drills and webinars and things like that. One thing we ask them is to submit some questions for our podcast guests, and we'll take one of them and ask on the podcast. So today's is from Ryan Richardson, and he asked, what was it like growing up learning and playing in high school programs in Corning West and Corning East? What were some values you took from that experience and that you would share out to others building programs?
Oh, wow. Great question. Long time ago, for sure. I was a little bit late to lacrosse. Grew up playing more basketball, football, and baseball. But my older brother played, and so that kind of created my interest. There used to be Corning East and Corning West, and now there's just one high school, which is where Logan McNaney went. So obviously the town's changed a little bit. But I know for us, we definitely, smaller schools, so you had the ability to play three sports, and they kind of needed guys to be able to play more than one sport, which I think is really helpful. Just for your athletic development, just playing different sports. I also think it makes you more excited to get to that sport just as a change as well. But for us, we didn't have a big staff. My head coach carried a lot of the weight. So it was definitely a little bit different back then. I had a great head coach and who was a great person in Joe Stratton. Really cared about you as a person, wanted you to be the best player you could be, but definitely, being a good person, doing things the right way. Like when you fell short, he held you accountable. And certainly there were times where I fell short and he held me accountable, and I'm grateful for it now. I think that's where when you're a younger player, sometimes you don't appreciate that at the time. But most teachers and coaches, certainly in that youth and high school area, you're doing a lot more than you really think. You're having a bigger impact than you ever really realize. Just because when you're young, you don't know. And I think as you get older, the lens becomes a little clearer and you start realizing, all the times you've fallen short and maybe you were being immature and short-sighted. And unfortunately, it just takes growing up, and maybe that brain to finally form, to kind of come to terms with that. And you just get a greater appreciation from the people that were tough on you, the people that held you accountable, that didn't let you settle. And you're grateful for that. And, Coach Stratton was certainly one of those guys. And love my teammates. A lot of those guys still in touch with today. Just great guys, played because we love to play. We certainly weren't winning any national championships, but we had a great experience, loved competing, got to know each other, made lifelong friendships, and certainly learned to love the game. And that really made me passionate to try to keep it going after that.
So, Coach, on this podcast, we love hearing about, what led coaches to get into coaching, and it sounds like Coach Stratton was really impactful for you. Was him and any others impactful in leading you to get into coaching? Is it something that maybe you didn't think about for a while? Would love to hear more about how you ended up getting into this profession.
Yeah, I had two older brothers that I looked up to a lot, and they were involved in sports, but a lot of other things. So I had some good role models there, and a great family. My mom and dad, who both passed away, were just great people that would do anything for you. My mom was amazing. She didn't miss many events. Whatever you were doing, she's going to be there, support you, good or bad. Never made a comment on how you played. She was just there to be there and support you. Grateful for that. My dad was the same way, very supportive, really didn't talk a lot about after the game. Once it was done, it was more, hey, just play hard, be unselfish, be a good teammate, do your best, and then let it go. Which I think for me sometimes was a little bit hard. Had high expectations on yourself. So, if you didn't play well, it was sometimes hard to let that go. But I think I look back at my coaches, and they were people I really looked up to and admired, and idolized. And so, thinking about it now at this point in my life, I could see why maybe I did get into coaching. Is those people had such a big impact on my life, and I wanted to be like them. And I was thankful for their influence. I learned so much above and beyond just what we did on the field. I learned a lot about life. And again, just admired them so much, in turn, it was like, man, maybe I would want to do that as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I feel like that's the impression I always got from you, and I tell people, in college, you spend a lot of time with your players, and we spend a lot of time with you over those 4 years when we're there. And a lot of it is about lacrosse, but I remember almost every meeting we had, you had a point that was referring to something beyond lacrosse. A lot of it, I feel like, was you trying to get people prepared for professional world of, hey, you're late to practice, but what happens when you show up late to your first meeting? Hey, I asked you to bring a binder and a pencil to practice, but what happens when you don't bring that, the pamphlet you need for your first job interview or whatever? And a lot of those things are, as much as the on-field stuff sticks out, I felt like you were consistently giving that to us. And early on, I probably didn't appreciate it as much, but when I graduated, I was like, man, I learned so much from being a part of that program that you can't get just going to school somewhere.
Well, you hope that, the through sports, you can learn a lot about life. And what people don't realize is as much as you're competing, within a athletic environment, you're going to go out in the real world and you're going to be competing every day, regardless of what occupation you go into, you're competing. Certainly you guys are doing that right now, right? Like there are other people that provide opportunities where you can improve in lacrosse, but you guys are doing it at an elite level, and you guys take a lot of pride in trying to find ways to do it better and not being satisfied and doing it better than other people. And a lot of that means putting more time in and stressing the details and always challenging the status quo and trying to figure out what could we do better and challenging yourselves, which to me is what helps make the difference. And the be the best mentality, I think, again, very lucky that, when I got here, that was the saying that was on every wall. Bud Beardmore, deserves a lot of credit for, kind of having that concept. And all we did was fully embrace it. But it just makes everything so easy, right? Just when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to what we're trying to do here, not everybody's going to be an All-American. Not everybody can have a 4.0, but you can try to be the best version of yourself. And we know once you get out there, you're going to be competing with, other people for job opportunities, for promotions, for opportunities. And it's not always the SAT scores that you brought in. It's really how you do your business, how you carry yourself. Can your boss trust you? Are you reliable? Are you doing the extra? Are you coming early? Are you staying late? Are you personable? Can you fix problems? Can you find solutions? Are you productive? Do you communicate well with others? So there's all these little tests every day that, guys don't realize, like you can earn trust by, hey, this is what time you need to be there. This is what you're supposed to bring. Is everybody going to be perfect? No. But if we let it slide, like, all right, well, that's what guys become. They become forgetful, or, they are maybe a little nonchalant or maybe a little sloppy. And you know that when they get out there, that's not going to help them. So trying to give the guys reminders and context, to your point, Matt, where it's like, listen, like it's not going to make or break us today, whether, you were on time, but we're building habits here. And if we allow it, then you're probably doing it down the road. And it's just nice sometimes when guys have internships or they get that first job and they come back, whether it's for the alumni game or whatever, and they're like, Coach, you should see how many people just show up late and they think it's no big deal. And they're like, well, why are you upset? Like, I don't think it's a big deal. Like if someone was late for a meeting with me, I wouldn't care. And, it's like, well, that's not the way the world works. You talk to people that run companies, being on time and respecting someone else's time is a big show of respect. If you're meeting at 9 and you get there a little bit early and you're there every day, like there's a consistency there and an attention to detail that people are going to see, that gains trust in you. And a lot of times if people have trust in you, they're going to give you more responsibility. More responsibility means more opportunities. More opportunities means you're moving up the ladder, hopefully. So, hopefully guys, when they get out in the real world can see that. We've had some fun conversations with some guys, through the years going, okay, I get it. But listen, I was no different. I have to put myself in the guy's shoes. I needed my coaches. They helped me. I was not perfect. They held me accountable. They wouldn't let me settle. And there aren't many guys who come back later and say, man, I wish you'd let me settle. I really just wanted to be average. Like no one wants that. It's just sometimes in the moment, it's a little harder than you want it to be. And, sometimes you want it to be a little bit easier, but being great is not easy, or everybody would do it.
Coach, I think you have such a unique perspective too, because, prior to Maryland, you obviously went to Cornell, amazing institution, long time coaching at Navy, with the military component, a couple years at Harvard, and then what you've built at Maryland. When you talk about be the best and you're talking about on and off the field, I feel like you've seen a range, that's probably allowed you to, pull everything together and understand that, hey, it's not just about one or the other. Like we can do it all. Can you talk a little bit about how those different experiences shape to what you're building and continue to build today?
Yeah, great point. You learn a little something along the way. Even as a player playing for Coach Moran at Cornell, a guy that really did challenge you to be your best. A lot I learned from him. He was always pushing you. Maryland alum, so that was a kind of a cool thing. Towards the end, just kind of his relationships with Maryland and his connection there, obviously was really neat. We had the opportunity to scrimmage up there, I think back in 2019, and he spoke to the team, and it was awesome for our guys. It was great for him. But my first job, up at Ithaca College, Jeff Long was a guy, one of the best players that I've ever been around and played with way back in the day. Was just a great role model, a great coach. I couldn't have asked for a better person to work for coming out of the gates. As great a player as he was, he was a great teacher, role model, really pushed the guys, but loved the guys, wanted what was best for them, but also connected with the guys really well. I learned a ton from him, very humble guy, very approachable, gave me a lot of responsibility at a young age, which I'm super grateful for to this day. Just will touch base with him on a lot of different things, whether it's lacrosse or just his family or music or things like that. So grateful for that relationship. And then going down to the Naval Academy, the just what that place stands for, what it's all about. To your point, Deemer, a lot of be the best in that, where you're taking more classes, you're challenging yourself as a person every day. What that place stands for, what you're ultimately doing, being a great leader, a great person, character, the work ethic, the brotherhood, the teamwork, the selflessness, so much that you can learn from. And I would say anybody that wants to coach, spending any time at a service academy, you're really going to get a lot out of that experience. And a lot of it is you're learning from the institution itself, not just the coaches there. And I had a great head coach and Richie Mead when I got there, and Matt Hogan, who was there as an assistant, and Mark Goers and Ryan Moran. And we had so many good coaches there when I was there that I learned from, but the institution itself, but also there were so many great people that we worked with. We had officer reps that were our liaison to the military. So when we traveled, we got to know them, and, they would make sure that we were, staying and following the guidelines, and doing things the right way. To this day, a guy like Colonel Rupp, I still get to see. He'll come over and officiate some of our scrimmages, and just a great human being, but a great role model, just a terrific leader. Captain Thorpe, who's our academic advisor, who passed away, was just another awesome human being. And sometimes people, when they think about the military, they think that every leader is this in your face, yell and scream person. And, one of the many things that I took away from my experience there is that, the best leaders, they can't just rely on yelling and screaming, because the guys go tone deaf. It's better to lead from the front, lead by example. Don't ask the guys to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself. But you want the guys to work hard for you, not out of fear, because I don't think doing it out of fear really works. Certainly guys need to know there's consequences, but just doing it out of fear, I just don't think you're going to do it the right way and to the potential you could be. I think if you're doing it out of love, or you're doing it because you don't want to let somebody down, I think that's much more valuable. And you're doing it because you love to do it. You see the importance of it. So there's so much that I took away from that I'm using on a daily basis. Even a guy like Brendan Looney, I'll be the first to say, much like a lot of other players that played there, that I'm still in touch with, and we still have group texts, and I still get to see frequently. I learned a lot from him. Still a lot of what he preached, we're utilizing in our locker room. Be accountable, be strong. Those are things that, I think our guys, we want to make sure that we emphasize to them. And anytime we're fortunate enough to play late in May and it's Memorial Day, I think reminding them, hey, this is not just the pinnacle of lacrosse. This is Memorial Day weekend. There is something bigger than all of lacrosse this weekend. It's remembering those who gave their lives. And We don't ever want to forget those guys, because just in talking to the people that I'm acquainted with, they're like, listen, just remembering them and remembering that sacrifice is all they ask. And they never want to be forgotten. So I think it's important that we emphasize that to our guys, because most of us do have somebody that we've known, whether it's family, friends, neighbors, that has served and made a lot of sacrifices so we could do things like this that we love. And it'd be a shame if we ever didn't do that. So I think there's a lot of responsibility to kind of keep passing that on, and our guys have done a great job with that. And I think they really see the importance of that.
Yeah, and I think you can see that, coach, in the way I've heard you talk, but the guys that come out of the program, the way they, even if it's just like sharing things on social media, it seems like they share the right things, and the messaging out of a lot of those guys and out of you always seems to follow the theme of there's things more important than just lacrosse stuff we're doing. And I think, you've been very authentic in how that's come out. A question to kind of building off that a little bit. One thing we wanted to talk about with you is program culture. I personally think that's one of the things you've done the best, and I'm very biased because I played under a program that you built with your culture. I know so many people in the last 10 years. I play with many that Jack Horse and Ajax came out last year. So I can see over the last, 15 years, the elements of your culture that are consistent. And I'm curious, with all these experiences you've had at other programs, what are the things that have really risen to the top that are really important for you to instill into a program you're coaching to build that culture? And how do you ensure that those things are prioritized on a consistent day in, day out basis? So those things that are important that you're talking about aren't just things that you write are important for culture, but you ensure they're prioritized in daily actions and how you operate a program at an operational level.
All good stuff there. All really good questions. I think a couple of things that first come to mind is I've been really lucky to have great people in this organization, in all areas. Start with the coaching staff because it's the first thing you think of. But we have guys from different backgrounds, and I love that. And I always want to surround myself with really bright people and people that will challenge me and challenge the status quo. Because I don't think I don't ever want guys to feel like they're afraid to say what their thoughts are. If you just kind of settle in and define yourself as this is who I am, and I'm going to create this like aura of fear where people like are afraid to kind of, hey, coach, well, why don't we do this, or what do you think about this? You're going to fall behind, because the game is ever changing. The young people that we're working with are growing up differently. So you constantly have to adapt and adjust. So I've had so many great assistant coaches here that have been critical. And although they bring a kind of a background of different experiences, I do think at the end of the day, the things that we value culturally, there's a lot of alignment there. So there's consistency across the board. And I would take it one step further. When it comes to academics, my academic advisor, Heather Ariana is awesome. She's very consistent as well, very much aligned. Anthony Benyarko, some of the sport supervisors that I've had, like Kristen Brown, like I have all these people that across the board, we're all on the same page. Ben Hoffman, now our strength coach. So like we will meet, and usually it's once a week, and we will talk about everything, but there's definitely from the top down, like, okay, here are the things we value. These are the things that are the most important things. And so everybody kind of understands like what we're trying to do here. Again, the kind of the be the best, challenging our guys to be their very best, to reach their full potential, holding them accountable. But yes, doing that in an environment where like we have to want them to come back. So there's an element there of sure, like we want them to reach their full potential, but this is college athletics. It's not the pros. So you got to have an atmosphere where the guys see the value in what you're doing, but also you're doing things that make them want to come back every day, not like dreading coming back. So I think for us, obviously the competition part of it when we recruit players, we talk a lot about we want self starters, we want competitive guys, guys that listen. If we're the ones that have to get you excited to try to be the best version of yourself, this probably is not the right place for you. You really have to realize what we're trying to do, because we're doing it for your benefit. Certainly, we have a team and a program that we're trying to make sure that we can compete at a high level, but we need to try to do it with guys that understand why we're doing what we're doing and what we're doing and why it's important. So, having competitive guys, having selfless guys, guys that will look out for each other, guys that are we over me, guys that are willing to take on roles. I think like a very undervalued one is somebody that like isn't afraid to be uncomfortable. I think guys with a growth mindset are really important to be successful. You never stop learning. You can never stop growing. If you look at the elite people in life, the Kobe Bryants, the Michael Jordans, the Tom Brady's, those guys were relentless. They were always looking for ways to get better. There was always this desire, this curiosity of how can I continue to get a little bit better in one aspect. And those are the guys that we're trying to kind of recruit and find. I do think when you do recruit them, how you recruit them is really important. What are you selling? Because you want to find guys that buy into what you're trying to do. And if in the recruiting process, it's a lot of just sizzle and it's just a lot of the bling, not sure you're getting guys that are going to be consistently thinking the way that you want them to think. So being honest in the recruiting process and being transparent, and really laying out your expectations, I think is really important. So that when they get here, they know exactly, what they're getting into. Because it is hard to be successful. It's hard to be a really successful student athlete. There's only so much time in the day, and you want the guys to have balanced lives. But you also, want them to get ready for not only the 4 years here, but also the next 40. So there's a lot that goes into that. I do think in the process, you're trying to get to know the players. You're trying to get to know as many people that know them, just so you have a really good sense of the character of the person that you're going to bring in. And it's a good match because there are so many great lacrosse programs out there, so many great places that you could be successful and have a great 4 year experience. It's really about just the right guys getting to each place, and hopefully you get the right guys for you. And if we can find the right guys that have enough athleticism, you always feel like you can put together a really good team and go on an amazing journey, have a lot of fun, and just have just a year that the guys will remember and create all these memories that they'll have for the rest of their lives, and hopefully chase some big goals. And along the way, maybe go through some ups and downs, but they're going to go through those ups and downs together. And they go through those challenges with the support of their brothers that hopefully they'll have for the rest of their lives too.
Coach, I think first off, I'm thankful this is a podcast because there was so much good stuff in there. I couldn't keep up notes wise, but there's, one thing I wanted to try to tease out of that I think is really interesting. You talk about, having people with different backgrounds, different opinions, guys not being afraid to, maybe speak up or share what they're seeing or thinking. But then you're talking about, hey, developing selfless guys and guys that identify, with the culture. Um, I think as a player, sometimes it's hard to find that balance, that back and forth. Like, when do I approach coach? When do I have these conversations? And as a coach, how do you instill your principles and things that you want and know to be tried and true while encouraging that? So, like, can you talk a little bit about that player coach dynamic and like, when are times and places for those discussions? When are times where you're like, hey, this is what we do and this is non-negotiable? I'd love to hear more about that because I think from afar, the way even just your offense tends to play, I think your principles and selflessness really shows. So I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think the communication part of it is critical. And that's something that I think we all are guilty of. We're human beings, right? We have emotions, and sometimes we get emotional. I think building trust with the guys is really important. How you treat them, especially in front of their peers. You're trying to be demanding, but you're trying not to be demeaning. And I think there's a fine line there of, when you're coaching guys, giving them feedback, but not in a disrespectful way or demeaning way, because all you're trying to do is enhance their performance. And I heard this a long time ago. We stole it from somebody, but it's always about the performance. It's not about the performer, right? Like, we're trying to get guys to play better. It has nothing to do with their character. So we're not attacking you as a human being. We're just trying to have you execute in a different way that we think is going to help you and ultimately the team as well. And I do think articulating that is important because, again, when you're changing the way guys do things, that there's at times vulnerabilities. Hey, that's not what I've done. Like, I'm not going to be good at that. And as an athlete, that's not something you want to easily do, right? You want to stick to the things that you've done well. You don't want to let those things go. So, you gotta, like, if you're asking guys to try some new things, you gotta kind of remind them, okay, yeah, we know it's going to be hard, but we need you to stay true to this because in the long run, it's going to help you. And that's not always easy because we do like instant gratification. And sometimes it's hard to see long down the road, when you're just like you're screwing it up, it's not going well. So reinforcing, hey, it's better. Like, you know what, like you're moving in the right direction. So looking for like little progress, little victories, things like that, and reminding them like it's a long year. It's a long 4 years for these guys. It's always about improvement and remembering that as you're moving up, right? And you're moving and you're improving. It's never at a straight line, whether it's 6 degrees or 45 degrees. There are little peaks and valleys as you're going up. So, as much as you might have 3 good days in a week, you might have 2 days that weren't quite as good, but you're still going to be better. So, I think those little victories are huge, and making sure that with each guy, understanding as much as you can how they tick, to try to figure out how can I interact with this guy, and by knowing them a little bit better, I'll say in a way that it registers with them. That just requires time with them, and I would love to say that we're perfect at it. We're not. We're always trying to do a better job, and I think sometimes, right, we're not always as patient as we'd like to be, whether it's the player or the coach. You have to remind yourself, hey, these are 18 to 22-year-olds. I was one of them, and at times I didn't get it always, or I was a little distracted coming to practice. And I think always reflecting on your experience and all the mistakes that you made as a player, and I had a ton, or even as a young coach, like no one's perfect. We're still trying to get to an elite place. We're trying to maximize what you have. So you're trying to not lower the bar. You're just trying to stay firm, but you've got to be understanding. We are working with human beings. And they're not perfect, and sometimes they are trying, but sometimes it's just really hard. And sometimes, like, maybe you got to throw a little humor in there. Sometimes you got to like let it go and come back to it, and realize there are just some days where it's going to be hard, and maybe we're not going to be as productive as we'd like it to be, and maybe we need to start again tomorrow when everybody's got a little more rest. Even things like that. And I think the older you get, the more you realize those things.
Yeah, and coach, a lot of I actually have one of my earliest memories, and I'm not even sure if I've ever told you this. I've told many other people at Maryland is getting to campus before we started fall ball my freshman year. We hadn't gotten helmets or sticks or anything, so I'm wearing my old Loyola Blakefield 2012 helmet, my stick that I used in the last championship game. And we're out on the field. You said the field was open, so it was like, hey, you guys can go play, throw around with each other, but we weren't starting yet. And so I'm out there tossing around with some of the other freshmen. I think I'm playing catch with Ryan Lehman, and you came out to say hey, and you started teaching me some things about throwing mechanics. about how I was catching and throwing the ball, just like little things, not, just like grabbing me like, "Hey, try this." And I'm sitting there thinking, I was, I just was a really good high school player. I just got recruited to Maryland, and now I'm learning how to catch and throw, and it was kind of humiliating for me at that moment because at that point, your ego kind of can take control over that. But it was such a microcosm for my whole future experience with you and at Maryland. And I believe what you guys do there and is your attention to detail and that be the best is not, hey, you can catch and throw great, but are you the best you can be? Are you as efficient as you can be? Are you as consistent as you can be? Can you get it out at different angles? Can you get it out on the move? All right. Well, it was uncomfortable for me. I got worse at catching and throwing that way for a little. And you guys were always talking about, can you get comfortable being uncomfortable? Because that's the way you're going to improve. I wonder, like, I think that is one of the things that you and the program have done so well is challenge. You have so much conviction in that there's more efficient and more effective ways to develop some of these skills. You and your staff do such a great job of teaching that, and you can see the consistency of technique from your players over and over and over, whether it's approaching the ball or how you throw. How do you think about skill develop that? Like, how do you think about that skill development piece? And is that as a big a part of your coaching as it seemed to me?
Yeah, I think you start at the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are everything, right? The small things become big things, and again, as simple as it seems, sometimes guys, we play lacrosse, but we weren't really taught some of us like how do you hold a stick? Like how do you hold a stick in a way that is the most conducive? Sometimes guys just pick up the stick, they wrap their hands around it, they grip it super tight, their thumbs are parallel with their fingers, and you're super rigid and you're kind of punching the ball. But unless someone says anything, you're just going to do that, right? We just like, so you just do what you do until somebody explains to you, well, wait a minute, why do you do it that way? If you did it this way, this might help you be even better. And I think as for any college athlete, right, you're always like, sure, I can be better. Tell me how. And I think there's a lot of pressure on us to try to find any little way where we can help you with performance. And there's so many ways to do that. But, just little things like that. Because if you get that wrong, and Jesse always talks a lot about a book called The Compound Effect, where you one part is off, and then so many other parts. Coach Bernhardt, our assistant coach, Jesse, if one part is off, then everything else is impacted. So getting the basics right, the fundamentals right, is huge. So whether it's how you hold your stick for passing and catching, but also with your footwork, right? And you guys do a tremendous job with footwork offensively and defensively, but like with your footwork defensively, you have to get like your basic footwork right, like your steps, your approaches. If not, you're going to get out on the 6-on-6 and your people are going to be blowing by you, like, so you have to get that part right. Well, it's not the most fun to work on approaches or footwork or how you hold a stick. Let's just scrimmage. And I feel like that's one of the challenges these days is there's a lot more playing, but I don't know if there's as much fundamentals or fundamental skill development or just even stuff devoted to some of the smaller things as much as there is the bigger things. Again, that's where I'm thankful for guys like you, the goalie Smith guys. Like there's a lot of really good teaching now that wasn't available maybe 10 years ago, where kids who maybe you're committed, but you want to continue to improve, there are opportunities to learn from some of the best. And some of it is really seems like simple stuff that most people would know, but until someone makes you aware of it, you don't really know. So to me, it's the fun part, right? Like you see someone, they get a little vulnerable, they go one step back to your point, Matt, but then they take 5 steps forward and they see the value of it and they're doing better than they thought. And then what you hope is they're like, wow, what else can I learn? And that's the joy of teaching, right? Whether it's, lacrosse, what we do, or whether it's music or whatever people are passionate about, like to see that improvement and see the confidence and see like the kind of that growth mindset of, okay, how can I get better? That's awesome because you want to help those people get better and better to have more success.
Yeah, coach, we appreciate that. And I think Matt and I have really enjoyed the last couple of years trying to see how we can keep learning and evolving how we teach, how we do things. Matt learned so much from his experience with you guys at Maryland and myself at Coach, with Coach D and Coach Caputo and Matt. Um, right now, as the game keeps evolving, are there any skills or fundamentals that you've shifted from offense or defense? Are there things that you think are just becoming more prioritized with how the game is being played? Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I think, as coaches, right, we're always trying to evolve. And I feel like the game is evolving, and you're always trying to maybe, are there some things that we can do that maybe other people aren't doing, or haven't done in a long time? Cause I think a lot of it goes back to that, like, much like there's styles that go in and out, when it comes to the way people dress, and it kind of comes back. I feel like a lot of the way lacrosse changes, it goes one direction, but then you come back to a style that maybe was utilized before. You're not reinventing the wheel. So I think for us, one of the things that we found is important. I've been doing some youth events over the last month or so here and there, just the importance of like, and not taking for granted like your stick. And sometimes these guys like they have a stick and if they can get a step down from 13, it shoots perfectly. But when it comes to just the passing and catching and making all the passes, and to your point, Matt, like the angles and making a pass from different angles and having different touches on the ball, like those are things that I think, sometimes guys don't think about. You're going to pass a lot more than you're going to shoot. So to me, it's more critical to have a stick that passes much better than a way it shoots, because you're going to have so many more opportunities. So I think those are things that sometimes when we're with the youth events or even with our guys, making sure we're good there. I think things that I think we kind of talk to recruits about, like just like be easy to play with. The more diversified your skill set, the more valuable you are. We always want to go back to, this is what I do well. I sit on the left side and I shoot the ball well. I'm a rheumatoid shooter. Well, if you're only going to do one or two things really well, you're really going to have to find a place that will allow you to do that, and put you in positions where you can be successful, which is fine. But I think the more that you're willing to acquire new skill sets, the more you can diversify your skill set, the more things you bring to the table. Boy, the more dangerous you're going to be, the quicker you're going to get on the field, the more ways we can use you. And so it allows your offense and defense to be better, just because you can do more things. To me, that's a lot more fun. So I think for us, versatile players, I think most coaches would tell you, like versatile players, man, they allow you to do so much more, than just people that do one thing well. But again, you need people with growth mindsets that, hey, I'll play offense or defense. I'll play attack or midfield. I can play righty or lefty. No one is born two-handed. So if you find somebody two-handed, you find a guy that, in my opinion, loves lacrosse because they put a ton of time in on that offhand. That doesn't happen by accident. So like those people with diverse skill sets, guys that are growth mindset guys, again, guys that take a lot of pride in their stick. I'm surprised that more guys don't learn how to string sticks, only because to me, if it goes wrong, knowing that you can fix it and you can fix it in a moment, and keep that thing thrown the way that you want, to me would be a big advantage. Certainly understand that a lot of guys don't. But man, I feel like if you can just fine tune that thing anytime it's not thrown the way that you want, the ability to adjust it would go a long way for you.
Save a lot of stress for sure.
Yeah. I mean, those guys, popular guys on your team,
Yeah. Got to
you know,
keep the six fingers.
yeah, like if I'm those guys, I'm buying those guys Chipotle, like if they're not charging, which a lot of our guys don't, I'm taking those guys to lunch, maybe get them some Chick-fil-A or something.
Yeah.
I had to learn because our boy TJ Neubauer started getting too lazy and to string my sticks, even though I was paying him. So then I started teaching myself a little bit. But yeah, I definitely agree with you there. It's worth acquiring just the simple basics of that.
Oh, yeah. Right in the middle of the game, you wanna be able to tweak that thing. Maybe it's throwing a little bit down, maybe the weather's bad. You just can adjust, and again, maybe it's not doing everything, but fine tuning it, I think, does go a long way. Because, right, whether it's the humidity, the heat, the wetness, the ability to have that thing feel like, it's an extension of your hand and you can do anything, I think goes a long way with your confidence, right? The last thing you want to worry about going into a game is I hope this pass gets there. I hope this shot goes where I want. You want that like second, just kind of second nature, like, man, it's going where I want it to go. You're going to play so much more confidently.
I think that's a unique thing about the sport of lacrosse that athletes that come into the game from other sports maybe miss is how about like it's your fault if the stick doesn't work the way you want. It's my stick is. Well, that part of the game is that it's like your hand in another sport. That like in basketball saying, "Oh, my hand's not shooting well today." So I do think that's a great point. Coach, I want to just echo what you said. I think one of the reasons that Deemer and I do what we do and focus on those details, for me, I came out of college and was mind blown at how much better I got at Maryland. One, I think systematically in your culture of just developing players to push themselves to be the best, get comfortable being uncomfortable and understanding that that's part of the growth process. And it was really hard at times, but also just trusting you and the staff we had there, of you can get better if you focus on these things. If you do them consistently, if you push yourself, you can get better. And I felt that improvement. And so I know that mindset that I got in Maryland, this is what I spoke to Deemer about like 5 or 6 years ago when we started doing this together was I didn't feel like I had that in high school. And I was like, where was this my whole life? And so trying to take some of those things, and we're just huge believers in what you talk about of you can get better if you're intentional in the way you approach improvement and you have somebody you trust that you can go to and you say, okay, I'm just going to trust that guy. I'm going to trust Coach Tillman because he's shown that, he has the credibility to tell me if you hold the stick like this, you're going to be worse for a day, but you'll be better in 2 months. You'll be better in 3 months. You'll be a better player overall. So that was just something that I think the coaches that influenced you, I know you've strongly impacted me and how I approach, my decisions in pursuing a career after college.
One of the things you learn through athletics, and certainly for me, I was not the greatest player, but I did love being on teams. And but what I learned was you don't need to be the most talented guy. You just need to kind of stay more committed. I think Tom Brady talked about it. There was a couple great clips where he talked about you don't need to be special. You just need to be what most people aren't, and he rattled off, being dedicated, committed, resilient, right? Consistent with all that stuff. But what I learned was I could probably be successful if I was willing to do more than a lot of other people. And certainly I was never going to be the very best student. And I was never going to be the very best player, but I could probably hang in there, hold my own, or have some success if I paid a higher price and I put in more. And so a lot of times, right, we're all byproducts of the lens we have and our experiences. I look at our guys and they're a heck of a lot more athletic and talented than I ever was. So I always reflect back and look at them and say, listen, you unfortunately have a guy looking at you that sees what you can be, not what you can't be. And if you just put the time in and you stay committed and you don't back down and you stick with it, I believe our guys can do just about anything. And maybe I'm crazy to think that, but I am an optimist, and I always kind of feel like if I'm not thinking that way, then I'm selling our kids short. I want our guys to be like, listen, I see all these great things in you. So I'm dumb enough if we put the time in that I think you could be really good. And I think our team could be really good. Even though if you look at some basic things like, yeah, you could say we don't have this or you don't do this or you don't do that. Well, we're not focusing on that. We're focusing on the things that you can do well, and let's work on maybe some of the things you're not quite as great at, and maybe you'll never be elite there, but we'll get better at those things. So let's look at what your potential is and work towards it, and take pride and have fun and enjoy those little gains, because those little gains can turn into big gains. So I feel like any good teacher, mentor, coach, parent, that's the way you got to think, right? Like, can't look at what these guys don't have and what their shortcomings are. Let's look at what they can, and sometimes you need that person to believe in you, to kind of kickstart that. And so again, I think that's part of our responsibility is help these guys, because there's a lot of reasons to doubt yourself. The world's a really crazy place right now, and there's a lot of things that are impacting these young people. A lot of the world doesn't make sense right now. So there's a lot of negativity, and I think the more that we can be optimistic, and we can look at the good things that people do, the good things that our teammates do, the beauty of the locker room, how healthy the locker room is, right? It's the greatest place, the locker room. No one cares where you're from. No one cares what you look like. No one cares what religion you are. We're brothers. We all look out for each other. We look at the good in each other, not the bad. And I think anybody that maybe never had that experience doesn't realize why the locker room is so special, because we put all that stuff aside because we're working towards some goals, and we look and we embrace what our differences are. Not We don't hold each other back because they don't see things the way that we see it. I think there's a lot of value to having all these guys with different viewpoints and that bring different things to the table. That's how we grow. That's what makes our country great.
Coach, you kind of mentioned there too, like with approaching the players, but also that idea around like paying a higher price. We have hopefully a lot of coaches continuing to listen to this podcast. I know Matt and I really look up to you as someone to keep learning from. What advice would you have for young coaches or other coaches out there in terms of continuing to develop their craft and, hope one day to maybe leave a legacy like you're leaving currently? I would love to, anything you could share there would be
Yeah,
awesome.
I think the ultimately, right, we all do this because we wanna help young people, just like the coaches helped us, and I think you just feel obligated to do so. And sometimes that is being tough on the guys, and sometimes people don't get that, 'cause, when things aren't going well, you have to hold guys to standard. Guys need to know, boundaries and things like that, and sometimes guys need tough love. I did. But other times, building confidence is important. So being positive, being upbeat, all those things. But your success will be measured by the young people that you influence, the fathers, the husbands, the brothers, that they become, what they do in their community, and that's really, at the end of the day, whether you're successful or not, you'll see that down the road with who they become, and even the small part of impact that you had in their lives. And I think making sure that is a big part of your focus. You're going to lose games. Some days it's practice isn't going to go well. Sometimes you're going to feel like you had everything set up for success and the ball takes funny bounces. But that's part of it, right? Part of it is dealing with disappointment, learning how to be a good loser, or a guy that when things don't go well, you handle it the right way, even though it hurts really badly, it's carrying yourself the right way, and realizing it's not like the movies, it's not a happy ending. So teaching the guys to be resilient, teaching them to have respect for others, and winning and losing with dignity, because it is really important. And then I think on top of that is you can always learn. There are so many easy ways to learn and get better. You guys have your videos, you have podcasts, there's books you can read. If you don't like to read books, go back to the podcast or books on tape. There are videos on YouTube, all types of coaching and teaching. I've heard this from other people. Success has clues. Find people that are successful and figure out how they got there, why they're there. And there's probably a reason. Anybody that's successful in any aspect of life, like, talk to them, ask them, how'd you get here? What makes you different? What do you feel like were your advantages? If you could tell yourself 10 years ago to do X, Y, or Z, what would you do? So there's always ways to get better. And if you're always trying to learn and get better, man, like you're going to continue to evolve and have success. If you're closed-minded and you really don't want to open yourself up, I just feel like you get to a spot and you kind of plateau. So even now, we're trying to kind of talk as a staff and figure out based on the fall, what could we have done better? Talk to our players, what could we have done differently? And then next year, do a better job with it because we know we're not going to be perfect, but we're going to strive to do as good a job as possible.
Awesome. Thank you, coach. And as we wrap up here, just echoing all those things you said, I know are true about the impact you've had, obviously, on myself, but all of many of my best friends are guys that have played for you. And I know how it's amazing how well you stay in touch with so many of these guys 5, 10 years outside of coaching. And I'm sure there's plenty I don't know about beyond that. And so I know all of us look up to you, and it's about more than just lacrosse with you, which I think anybody that's played for you will echo. They're a better player and a better person having gone through your program. So I just want to echo that this, but we all talk about it all the time. We're so grateful to have played for you and been a part of that program. You're doing a great job. We're so thrilled and grateful that you were willing to hop on a podcast with us and support two guys out here trying to get better at what we do. And we appreciate everything you've done to support us so far as well.
No, thanks for having me. And obviously, I'm grateful for guys like you. To be able to do what I do is a dream come true at a place like Maryland. I'm so grateful, and it's something I've really tried to focus on since COVID. Right, the ability to do what we do that got taken away, so I don't take it for granted. I'm thankful that they let me come back every day and to work with so many good people in our locker room, but also in the lacrosse community. You guys as well. Those relationships are huge. Relationships are everything in life, and to build those relationships, so proud of you guys, but just enjoy our friendship. Feel like I'm learning from you guys, but I love what you guys are doing to the young players out there, helping them go where they want to go. So again, just super grateful. I don't think I'd be very happy in a job where I sat behind a computer every day. So that wouldn't really be my why. So to be here, I'm really blessed. So many great players and coaches, and then thankful for the people here at Maryland for letting me do what I'm really passionate about, and obviously excited about what's ahead. But in trying to enjoy every day.
Awesome, coach. Well, thanks so much for the time, and really value our friendship as well, and wishing you the best the rest of this fall and the 2025 season.
Thank you, Deaver. Best of luck, guys. Look forward to seeing you out there. I'm probably going to see if I can pick your brains a little bit on some things, pick up some things I can bring back to the guys. But thanks for what you do and doing it in such a great way.
Awesome. Thank you, coach. See ya.
See you guys.